Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. The Sentinels team have given a more detailed response to their defeats to FNATIC and PaperX going through the tournament. Kaplan says they simply got in their own heads, and yes, they're capable of significantly more Sentinels than they showed over the last few days. Can they turn it around for the rest of the season? What's it going to look like for the World Championship qualification and performance towards the end of the year? And who's going to win at the final 4 teams remaining in Toronto? Very much into your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Thought this is pretty cool to see. FNS, Crashies, and Boaster, of course, all together. People were joking around that FNS looks happier with these images than he did when he won his Masters Championship. But, you know, for Sassy, for example, who's also a champion, Sassy arriving in Toronto with Sentinels and MIBR already eliminated. So maybe not so ideal, but the 4 teams remaining, it certainly creates an exciting tournament going forwards. Of course, talk about G2. Can they finally get over the hump and actually win one of these tournaments and not choke it again? Wolves would be a remarkable Cinderella run. Can PaperX finally do it after all the promise and seemingly falling off and, you know, having some big ups and downs? Could they get over the line? And then, of course, FNATIC looking to get back to the top. So there's so many great storylines from here to the end of the tournament. We also do have a bit of a teaser for a new map that's coming relatively soon. It's not much that we're seeing here, but, you know, just something anyway to keep in mind. I know that it has vibes, and I feel like these tracks are kind of interesting, what could potentially be going on there. People are saying PaperX reference, right? They're saying track by track, but I don't know if that's really, you know, what's actually going on here. But I will say that, you know, if there's a railway tracks on the map, they're going to have some use, aren't they? Like, I don't know, they're probably not just going to be here for no good reason, but we'll see. There's a new map there coming out with relatively soon. We'll see how it goes. We got the Jet, we got the Omen, and of course we got the Chamber on the bottom right. Chamber back into the meta, baby, here we go. But let's talk Seangares. Seangares confirms that he is going to no longer be with Shopify Rebellion going forwards, and there was lots of discussion as to why. Seangares has had, let's say, a controversial few weeks, especially after all the match-fixing drama that Seangares was working on releasing some, you know, content about, which he eventually did, but he was investigating it. Then we saw a bit of drama with, like, Mr. Funhav or whatever. He revealed some information that made it more difficult for Seangares to collect his evidence, and then he released that big video that was, you know, taken in controversial fashion, right? Because Seangares looked at some, let's say, rounds, he looked at some evidence, and he suggested that there may be certain people that have been throwing matches for money. That would not be a surprise at all, but the real question is, okay, well, who, right? Who do Riot look at? Who do Riot go after? To our understanding, probably that investigation is still well underway as it stands. That was certainly the talking point at the time. But we know that some of the teams have come out to say, look, we stand by our players. There isn't enough evidence to suggest this, and therefore there's been, you know, some backlash to Sean. People saying, look, unless you have concrete proof and evidence that things have, you know, happened in the way that you said that they've happened, then, you know, it's not a good look, right? So you can see both sides of the story here, but he's deciding to call it a day. Now, he actually describes what this is for, right, on the Reddit here, and, like, kind of why he's taking this decision and why this is happening in the way that it has. And I think it's pretty remarkable that he, you know, speaks so candidly here about why this recent drama has affected him. Not because he's seen the backlash and he's decided to step away, but actually for a slightly different reason. So he says, I totally understand how people came to these conclusions. That conclusion being that Seangares is kind of leaving Valorant because of the backlash for the reaction to him exposing some of the match fixing. Whether, you know, the individuals involved anyway, whether they were complicit. But I promise there's a lot of information that simply isn't available. There are things that I cannot release to protect people who have helped me, and things I will not release to protect my family. You don't have to believe it, you don't have to agree with my methods, but if the alternative was none of this would ever be known, if that was the, you know, the alternative was that none of this would ever be known, morally I couldn't live with that. So, you know, Seangares is pretty clear that there's some information here that maybe he's sharing with Riot and their investigation team that he's not really able to show publicly, and maybe evidence that would put to bed some of the doubts about Seangares' perception, because, like, at the end of the day, Sean has built up a very strong reputation in esports over the last, like, decade and a bit, right? So, you know, when he comes out and says something, people are going to certainly treat it with some serious respect. And, you know, obviously it takes a lifetime to build a reputation, one moment to ruin it, or whatever people say. But the point is that Sean has, in my opinion anyway, earned a benefit of the doubt in this instance. And if he says, look, there's more information that basically implies that some of these individuals that I mentioned were indeed match fixing, but that's information that I can't necessarily share for various like legal related reasons, at least for the time being, then maybe we take him at his word. Obviously, maybe we don't. Intrigued to your thoughts. There are many things that I must keep to myself, and there are other things I'm not really fully to speak about. I'm not saying I'll never do anything in Valorant again, but some of the things that occurred behind the scenes and some of the things I've learned have been very eye-opening. Here's what I will say. I brought my concerns to Riot Games on May the 7th and continually spoke with them until the release of my video. I was upset when Mr. Funhaver went on stream because it was evident the way things were transpiring would not lead to any justice being found. I literally ended up with the email from the person I'm accusing, which says do not share this email. For now, I'd rather explore some new options outside of this one ecosystem. SR did not fire me. I do not have a bad relationship with any individual in the organization. I'm parting ways with SR. Nothing to do with the backlash on my last video. I fully expected that response and even communicated that to many people prior to releasing it. The iBuyPower scandal in Counter-Strike wasn't something that was broken open in one day. It took months of people dragging Richard Lewis through the mud before he was finally vindicated by a text message and Valve skin tracing, and that was only one team. My morals couldn't allow the information in my video to not be public. I will say that one thing kind of sucked and caught me off guard was that the competitive mods making the initial video thread into a live match thread that allowed the bots and bad actors to set an early narrative. Fast forward to today, most of those initial comments are downvoted to the bottom. To be honest, other than that, I think most of the response have been pretty expected. I'm actually really happy with how much support I got with the video. What some of the community doesn't understand is that awareness is the only way this issue will be solved. I wasn't making the video for viral, clout or fame or whatever. I hyped it up, I released it as soon as possible to get as much awareness and eyeballs on the issue as possible. I'm not CoffeeZilla. I didn't want to make it my job to continue investigating all of this. I do have a family to feed after all, but I posted what I believe to be true and let the community take it from there. I truly felt and still feel like it was the only way to eventually find some level of justice. As I mentioned above, the iBuyPower scandal took months of community effort to solve. I played with half the players on that iBuyPower team and personally defended them against the accusations. It wasn't until the D-Bomb ex-girlfriend text and the Valve skin tracing that the narrative then shifted. I didn't list specific players because I can't know for certain which specific players, as seen by Skadoodle being an iBuyPower, Scream being innocent, and Epsilon, etc., etc. So kind of comparing the two scandals back in the day. But it seems that Seangares, given what he's discovered and the state of the scene and everything, is like, look, this Valorant scene is more kind of broken than he would have liked to be the case, and kind of as a result, he is going to step away and at least try a little bit of time in a different ecosystem for the time being, while it seems Riot continues to investigate these issues behind the scenes. And Seangares is hopeful that in due course, in the same way that the iBuyPower scandal was eventually unveiled, that he will also be vindicated and the, let's say, individuals will come to justice. We will see, but definitely a story to keep an eye on here. And with Seangares' departure, of course, from Shopify Rebellion, it's brought this topic of conversation right up back into the forefront of the community's mind. So intrigued to your thoughts on that in the comments below. Tens is actually doing a bit of a meet and greet, it seems. So if you're in Toronto for the weekends, Saturday 11 AM, Red Bull Gaming Studio at Liberty Village. There's a few things that they're going to be up to here this weekend. Of course, no longer with Sentinels, but he's still got the red in the background, as we know. But a couple of clips to share. Speaking of Sentinels, after they bombed out of Toronto, not the result they were looking for, right? The defeat to Paper X was pretty tough, and then, of course, going down to FNATIC in the way that they did, again, they'll feel like that was a winnable series. The boys are commenting on a few things, but Kaplan especially says, look, thinks the team got in their own heads. They're capable of more than what they showed so far, and they've got to lock in from now to the end of the season. There's still some optimism for Sentinels to take away. They've qualified for both Masters tournaments. That's not something which has been easily done at all, but, they need to get closer to being competitive to, try and win this whole thing rather than placing 5th, 6th like DRX like to do.
In light of the team's elimination today and the prior loss to PRX, do you have any thoughts on the one thing the team could have done differently in hindsight?
I mean, there's a lot. I'm trying to think of the best one to pick. Just kept things a little simpler and just made sure we were just trying to play good Valorant and have fun doing it. I feel like we got in our heads a lot, and a lot of hard work didn't get put to justice because of it. And it hurts a lot. And I know that I speak for the whole team with that. And yeah, I don't have the solution. So that's why I don't like talking about these things much when I don't know what we need to do it better. But I think we're going to go figure it out. I think we all worked really hard and we all really want to win. And I think we want to do it for the fans more than anybody. More than any other reason to want to win. And I think we just didn't we just couldn't kind of get it to come out on stage in big moments. And yeah, I wish we had more confidence up there to do that. And I think we're going to be able to find it for champs. Thank you, guys.
Hey guys, Jacob from Capital S Esports here. You guys played a lot of different teams this tournament. I'm wondering if you have any favorite teams you played against or any favorite players on those teams?
I thought that all the Chinese teams were a ton of fun to play against. It's just really cool to see how good that region's gotten. And I think that, yeah, I'm just really impressed. I feel like they have a lot of strengths and play really good Valorant. I thought Wolves especially was a fun game. And I was really hoping to play them, you know, to coach against them again. And I'm excited to watch them maybe take it all. Wolves, Jayo.
Anyone else got a favorite?
I'd like to say like Paper X and FNATIC were pretty good to me. I mean, the Chinese teams, obviously, I love CU Fat Baby. Sadly, I let him down. You know, he's got to be the apprentice that carries on the legacy. But yeah, I think this is a very competitive tournament. I think Paper X and FNATIC look very strong. So
I think that Wolves Spring is the best player in the world.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Few Scrimbux here to close out the video. Crew have been, mix and matching whether they're playing with Nerve or not over the last few days, and it maybe seems like the conclusion on that could have been set. They were playing without Nerve. They were up 12-2 on Cubit, and Nerve's team were then down 4-9 to Leviathan on the other side. We know that Lev, their scrims historically haven't exactly been the best. So, if you're losing to them, it's never a great sign, but, it is what it is. Furia were playing Crew. That was 9-7 in their favour. Envy were down 3-5 to someone we don't really know. 100T up 6-2. Interesting to keep an eye on this 100T team just because they are going to play at the World Cup, right? The World Cup comes up in a couple of weeks' time. After this tournament concludes, a couple of weeks later, the teams that qualified will be out in Riyadh for the VALORANT Esports World Cup, and 100T will be among them, given that they qualified through the qualifier that we saw recently, as of course did NRG. They were also, though, down 7-2 to some other teams, so, a little bit unclear on that one. We had Furia up 6-0. We had KOI, interestingly enough, 10-0. This got some reaction, understandably, because people are like, damn, maybe KOI are back, but or maybe not. Of course, we have no idea who they were playing to really read into too much. And speaking of NRG as well, the Nerve team then continued to play Lev and went down 4-10, but NRG were playing the Exolos later team, of course, one of the big favourites, certainly from the South Latin American region, for the Ascension tournaments this year, outside of Envy and some of the other big favourites, of course, from North America, and NRG were playing them. Always a competitive team, and that was 7-8 in the end. But very much interested your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Tomorrow, the tournaments get back underway. We're going to talk about all the matches in some detail tomorrow morning. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.